Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Filipineuxs and Wellness podcast. This is Cheryl Sampson Ramirez, co founder, producer, and host of our initial episode in our sixth season titled Louisiana Filipinos Healing Historical Fragmentation. For this audio only episode, we are featuring AJ Haynes, musician and reproductive justice advocate, Rhonda Lee Richoux, freelance writer and historian, and Isa Tablan, queer multidisciplinary artist and storyteller. We take you on a journey down to the bayou, where our roots run deep and stories are rich. We hope that you enjoy this special episode. Maayong adlaw, welcome to our initial episode for our sixth season on the Philippine X in Wellness podcast. I'm your host, Cheryl Sampson Ramirez, and my pronouns are she, her, sha. Currently, I am streaming from the lands of the Tongva, Gabrielino, and Kich people, also known as Los Angeles in the neighborhood of Echo Park. Following our last episode, Womb Care, Tending and Nurturance, with Princess Manuel, founder and somatic womb alchemist of Luya Healing and Herbs, together with shamanic womb and energy healing practitioner Jeannie Smith, we bring to you from New Orleans, Louisiana, members of the Bayou Barkada, AJ Haynes, musician and reproductive justice advocate, Rhonda Lee Richoux, freelance writer and historian, and Isa Tablan, queer multidisciplinary artist and storyteller, as we talk about Louisiana Filipinos healing historical fragmentation. As mentioned in previous episodes, all views discussed are for informational and educational purposes only. It's not meant to be medical advice, nor does it constitute therapy or professional advice. Always consult with your healthcare practitioner, especially before starting any exercise or new health program, or a qualified mental health professional for your particular condition. Without further ado, we'd like to welcome to our podcast Isa, AJ, and Rhonda. Welcome to the podcast, y'all.
Hi, I'm Isa Tablan.
Hi, I'm AJ Haynes here.
Hi, I'm Rhonda Richoux.
We typically like to open our episodes with knowing where our guests are from. Can can you all please inform our community where are both sides of your families from and where are you currently streaming from at the moment? We'll start with AJ first, followed by Isa and then Rhonda on this one.
Hello, hello. So, my dad's side of the family is from Columbia, Louisiana, and my mom is from the Philippines, from Ilocos. And yeah, that's where I'm coming from. And I'm recording here in New Orleans. Um, uh, that's all I got to say. Let me move on.
Hi, this is Isa. So I'm originally from New Orleans, but I'm currently recording from Los Angeles, California. My dad's side of the family is from Cebu and Bataan, and my mom's side of the family is from Los Angeles and Kauai.
Awesome. How about you, Rhonda?
Um, I am born and raised in New Orleans, Louisiana, but I now live about 30 miles downriver from New Orleans, which is where I'm broadcasting from. My mother's side of the family, were all from New Orleans, but all of my grandfathers are from the different islands in the Philippines, like Panay, Cebu, and Luzon. And my father's side of the family from Cajun country, the Bayou Barkada area. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm excited to be here this evening.
It's exciting to have you all on to provide us with some additional Southern Filipino perspectives. And I want to note for our audience that Filipino in this context is spelt with a EUX. Really curious to know if y'all can let us know the origins of that. As Sheena mentioned in our last episode, 2026 is all about expanding our global and national reach to capture voices across our diaspora. Let's open up this episode first with learning a bit more about Filipinos in New Orleans. Let's start with that first question. So, Rhonda, can you tell us a bit about why Filipinos in New Orleans is spelled with the EUXS?
Yeah, that's from the French history. Louisiana has flown under the French and the Spanish flag before it became a part of the United States. And there's so many Cajuns. Almost everybody there who want a little bit of Cajun in them. So we like to end our words with the EUX or the AUX or the OUX, which is our Franco ending, the suffix to the words that we So that's where that comes from. Filipinos have been around here for a very long time. First settling in Bayou St. Malo, which is about 30 miles downriver from New Orleans. They didn't well at St. Malo because they were surrounded by veterinarians, the Isleños that Spain brought over to populate Louisiana when Spain took over. And they had a common language in Spanish. So they were able to thrive down there in the bayou or on Lake Bourne. But they did frequent New Orleans too, of course. Yeah, the Filipinos in St. Malo eventually spread out and intermarried with not just the Isleños, but with French people in New Orleans and other areas. Um, and they would spread out other Filipinos that came to New Orleans would usually first go to St. Malo and then decide, there were so many fishing villages in the area at that time. And the Filipinos built some thriving fishing villages at not just St. Malo, but also Manila Village and the Avenue, and Little Lake, and um, Janir Caminado, just different little islands populating the coast of Louisiana. And when it wasn't shrimping season, the fishermen would come in and they all had homes in New Orleans. The New Orleans became had a very big Filipino community, and they adapted to both the Spanish and the French that lived in the area. And in fact, my great grandmother, she spoke English, Spanish, French, several different Filipino dialects. And she would be the one who would interpret for the fishermen um, when they were buying, selling, and trading, because they often had very thick Filipino accent, and it was easier for her to just translate into the native, the tongue of the people that lived in New Orleans. So, we have a very varied past um, here in New Orleans. It's been populated, being a port city, it's been populated by many different groups of immigrants, and it kind of shows in how we have adapted ourselves to so many different cultures.
Wow. Now, Manila Village, is that also near St. Malo or part of St.
Now,
Malo?
St. Malo is on the eastern side of New Orleans in St. Bernard Parish. A parish is a county down here. So, yeah, it's more downriver, and to the east of New Orleans, whereas Manila Village is to the west in Jefferson Parish, right on the border of um, Clackamas Parish. I happen to live in Clackamas Parish right now. My family had a camp right on the edge of Clackamas Parish, which was right around the bend from Manila Village. It's called No, I won't blank. I'm so sorry. Anyway, it's my uncle's camp in Camp Dewey, and they had a small platform at Camp Dewey, but most of the other camps in the area, they used a large platform at Manila Village. It was the largest platform in the area where they would lay out all of the shrimp and dry it. And once it was dried, they would get on top of the shrimp with their brogans on and play some music and just dance around the shrimp to get all the husks, to clear all the heads and husks off. And then they put them through brushes to clean them out. That, it was a process that went on for quite a long time until um, the canneries opened and became obsolete. Manila Village was the largest fishing village of its kind. Um, there were mostly Filipinos, but Filipinos intermarried with other people, so there were Spanish there. There were also Chinese, um, and some Frenchmen. One of my good aunts married a Frenchman when her Filipino husband passed away during a hurricane. He got caught up in a hurricane, um, and so we got kind of a mixture of ethnicities in our family. We have Cajun and Spanish as well as the Filipino. And um, all of my grandmothers had to marry Filipino men from the islands up until a mother's generation. So a mother ended up marrying Rhonda Lee Richoux, who's a Cajun, and that's why I have the last name of Richoux. I'm the sixth generation, actually. My first ancestor came here to St. Malo in 1849 with his Irish bride, Bridget Nugent, and they started our family. And subsequently, he had another grandfather who came from Cebu, and then another who came from Iloilo and Penang, and another who came also from Cebu. My first grandfather, Felipe Madriaga, he came from the Lecos Norte, um, in northern Luzon. But yeah, my mother's generation was the first that was allowed to marry whomever they wanted to. Their marriages were not known.
Wow. What a long lineage that you have. Your roots run really deep out there in New Orleans. Issa and AJ, I guess, do you all know what year your family also, came to New Orleans? I think AJ, you were mentioning earlier that your dad is from Louisiana.
Yeah, my dad is from Louisiana, from Columbia.
And then, when did your mom arrive there?
We moved from, so I was born in Japan. My mom moved from the Philippines to Japan, and that's where she met my dad in Yokosuka. And then we moved to the States, was it 90? Must have been 93?
Okay, in New Orleans,
In Columbia.
in
Yeah, in Columbia,
Columbia,
Louisiana. And
right?
then I moved from Columbia, Louisiana to New Orleans.
Got it. How about you, Issa? When did you? I'm just curious now that Rana gave us the whole historical context of Filipinos in New Orleans. What wave or when did your parents come through to New Orleans?
So my parents were born in the States. I'm third generation. But my grandparents, my Lolo and I call her Mamet, I don't say Lola. Um, but they immigrated to the US in the 1950s. My Lolo, he came here to be in the US Navy. He like came in through San Diego and then he traveled to New Orleans and his base was in like Belle Chase, I believe. Um, and then Mamet, her family, she came with like her and her seven siblings to New Orleans. My great grandfather, he worked for the Philippine consulate, so that's why they moved to the States.
Got it. I love hearing about all these waves of migration to New Orleans and just how everyone ended up there. I mean, you and AJ already have talked about your commonality between the military, right? And getting to New Orleans through that similar connection. And I really just love hearing this context of Filipino history. First, talking about the landing in Morro Bay, California, to now we're really exploring St. Malo in Louisiana from Spanish galleons. And I know, like, not too long ago, recently, Lisa Ling had shared this history in her educational food show, Takeout with Lisa Ling. And I'm glad that that got brought onto, a streaming platform for more folks to learn about it. We found out about Bayou Barkada through one of my good friends in New Orleans, Denise Frazier. AJ, we talked about how you also know Denise. Um, Share with us our community. What is Bayou Barkada? I think Carolyn helped to set up this episode. Let's start with Isa first, then Rhonda, and then end with AJ on this one. Explain to us what Bayou Barkada is.
Yeah, so I would describe Bayou Barkada as kind of like a collective, like a cultural collective, of Filipino-Americans in New Orleans. And I think everyone that's a part of this, they all come from like different trades, whether it's art or history or writing or, all kinds of walks of life. And then they're kind of just working to sustain Filipino culture in Louisiana. So Bayou Barkada has worked to connect Filipinos both locally and across the country through tours, workshops, retreats, community events. Like I know that I've seen like Rhonda and AJ at times at like our monthly dinners that bring like Filipino residents and like also newcomers and like transplants to New Orleans to build community and like also on a larger scale, organizing like retreats and gatherings to explore Filipino history, like the St. Malo tours or Manila Village tours, and kind of just strengthening our own cultural identity through them.
What about you, Rhonda? I know that you've been with Bayou Barkada. Tell us about your experience on when you joined, how you became a part of it.
Well, I was a little bit resistant at first because I had so many family things going on, but Carolyn and Jessica just kept getting in touch with me through my um, Filipino Americans in Louisiana Facebook page. And finally, I told Jessica that I would meet up with her. And when I did, and she told me what Bayou Barkada was all about, I got really excited. I used to belong to one of the oldest Filipino clubs in New Orleans, the Filipino-American Goodwill Society. And when they shut that club down back in the 1980s, um, it like it was like losing a home to me because we had such a great community at that place. And we still kept in touch with our Filipino friends. And then Hurricane Katrina hit in 2005, and that just ended my community with Filipinos. All of the people that I grew up with, I couldn't find them. Nobody had landlines anymore. Everybody had cell phones, and it was very difficult to find people. So when Jessica told me about Bayou Barkada, and then I got to meet Carolyn and some of the other people there, I was just amazed at how wonderful it was. And I felt like I had come home. I really did feel like I had come back home. I hadn't realized until, I'm sorry, I hadn't realized until that point just how important the Filipino community was to me and how much I had missed it until I found it again. It was all new people. Well, I met Frank, who was also a part of our Filipino American Goodwill Society. He and I reconnected after so many years. It was wonderful to find him again. But having that community, and it was just like our old club used to be. It was like multiple generations. The young people got excited about hanging out with us old people, just as I did when I was younger, and I loved hanging out with the elders. So Bayou Barkada brought kind of brought me back home, to a place where I wanted to be, and I hadn't been able to be since Hurricane Katrina just scattered us to the wind. So that's what Bayou Barkada means to me.
Wow, I don't think too many people really know how many Filipinos were affected in Hurricane Katrina. But I know when we were running this run and we were getting ready. Yeah, you were telling me that the Filipino community was one of the hardest hit areas.
Yeah, yes, it was. A lot of the Filipinos who grew up in Louisiana or who had immigrated in New Orleans and who had immigrated to Louisiana and lived in New Orleans, many of them in the 80s and 90s had moved to St. Bernard Parish, where my family had moved to. And St. Bernard Parish and the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans were the two worst hit areas. I think there were only six houses in the whole parish that were not affected by the storm. All of the other ones were completely destroyed. There was 66,000 people, I believe, before Katrina in St. Bernard Parish, and now we're down to maybe 35,000 people. So it cut our population pretty much in half. And a lot of those people were Filipinos. Many of my family moved out of state when they're not coming back.
Oh gosh. AJ, how do we follow that? I mean, talk to us about your involvement also with Bayou Barkada and how you found them.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Bayou Barkada has also felt like a homecoming in so many ways. My mother passed away when I was 10, so I didn't grow up around a very robust Filipino community. In fact, in Colombia, I think she had like one other Filipino friend. And then we had one other Filipino like extended family member. So I actually met Ate Carolyn at Tatlo. I was there at this Filipino speakeasy in the quarter just by chance, and I saw I got there and it was just like immediately embraced by the atmosphere, and then I saw like a photo of Babaylan priestess, and then met Ate Carolyn after having like a tarot reading that was really powerful. And since then it's just been a really open um exploration of like my connection with my culture that I wasn't raised around, um, and how much of, things that so many of my mannerisms, so many of the ways that I show up for community, so many of the ways that I see the world and share, my gifts with other people is so Filipino. Like the more I'm around more Filipino folks. So in a lot of ways, Bayou Bricata is a collective, um, and it's like a healing collective, right? There are a lot of different healing practitioners within the network, and I think that speaks to the genius of like our indigenous ancestors, um, and how we always know how to find each other, even amid, the multiple apocalypses, right, that we've survived. So I feel really lucky to have come to yeah, to have come home, right, to what this group is and how it continues to expand.
Thank you for that. You all mentioned this famous Ate Carolyn and Jessica. Tell us who they are for folks that don't know who they are. Since I know Rhonda mentioned they were the ones that were really instrumental to bringing her into Bayou Barkada. And anyone can, respond to this question.
Yeah, I can kind of talk about it. Um, I feel like Ate Carolyn and Ate Jessica are kind of like our community connectors, where they're kind of just like the people that have kind of the glue for Bayou Barkada in a lot of ways. They have the connections and the history and just like the passion and enthusiasm for, helping to sustain the culture in Louisiana especially. Um Like I was talking to Ate Jessica before this, and we were just talking about like different things that are happening in New Orleans right now. Um, and for like the Filipino community and like things that they're planning. So it's always been kind of a passion of both of theirs. Like I know um Ate Jessica, like, was raised with my dad, so, like, they've known each other since they were really young, and I think she's kind of, like, always been that way with kind of being, very proud of her ancestry and her history and being from New Orleans as well as being Filipino.
Thanks. Rhonda, would you like to add anything to that?
Yes, when I first met Jessica, she and I started talking, and our hearts were like in the same place. We both grew up around Filipinos, and we both felt like because we weren't from the Philippines, we weren't Filipino enough to some of the new immigrants that were coming in. And our different, but for me, the Filipino American Goodwill Society kind of helped to bridge that gap. It helped us to get to know each other. And she felt the same way. So she wanted to have a community the way she described the community that she wanted to have. I said, that's just like our old club used to be. It was multi-generational, and it was a mixture of old Filipino families as well as the new immigrants and people just passing through. My uncle had a house right across the street from our club, and seamen that would come and decide to lay over in New Orleans for a while. He had a boarding house to keep them, and we would welcome them to our club, and they'd be able to meet people that had been here a while, as well as talk to people from their own islands, because a lot of the old men that were there, had come from several different islands, and they spoke several dialects. And they always cooked good food, good Filipino food every Saturday and had card games to get things going. So that was like the kind of community that we had. And Jessica kind of wanted that too. She wanted to um, have so many different experiences that would bring us together. And I think they're really succeeding in doing that. Um, Somebody mentioned that she had a tarot reading. Was that you, AJ? I was at Christina's restaurant. I was at Christina's restaurant and I had a tarot reading. And the funny thing was, synchronicities always happen when I'm around the Bayou Barkada. Um, and the reading was, young lady was reading my tarot. All of a sudden, I had this strong urge to tell her that her mother was next to her because I could feel her. And she started crying and she said that she had lost her mother not too long ago. And she'd been wanting to have a sign that she was near her. And I told her, I feel that mother energy right next to you right now. So we both started crying because my mom had passed away too. And it's just those kinds of synchronicities that happen every time we get together. And every time we were on one of our history walks, our immersive history walks, and the person that runs the building where our old club was happened to be out, and he invited us to come in. So I got to show everybody what the inside of the place looked like. It looked different because it was an apartment now. But I told them where the stage used to be, where the kitchen was that the old men used to cook out of. I got to really help them envision what it was like when we all got together there as a group. Because every time we get together, something magical happens. And that's why I always look forward to meeting up with all of you guys again. I just wanted to say that Carolyn and Jessica really nurture that type of spirit where everybody, we all come from different places, we all have different beliefs, and they honor all of it. And they're really big on allowing us the freedom to express ourselves spiritually too. We all have ghost stories, most of us. Um, and we all have healing stories. My great grandmother and her sister were healers. and they were seers. And they actually, my great grandmother had a voodoo priestess friend that she would trade herbs with and healing recipes with. And the priestess would give my grandmother, my great grandmother, voodoo dolls to use for her remote healing. She actually did remote healing rituals for people who were too sick to come to her for healing. And so she would just attach something that belonged to the sick person and do a healing ritual over that voodoo doll to heal her. And I imagine it worked because um, she and her sister had a lot of repeat customers. That's just a little interesting thing. Um, yeah, they nurture every part of us, our physical needs, our spiritual needs, our emotional needs. I need to be together as a group. They really nurture that, and if I don't have a ride, they find a way for me to get to wherever we're going. Um, they've just been absolutely wonderful. I can't express how much I appreciate them.
Oh, that's a big time shout out to Ate Carolyn and Ate Jessica. What are these monthly dinners that you all talk about in Ate Christina's restaurant? Let's give them some props too.
Yeah, unfortunately, Christina shut down Tatlow because it was right off of Bourbon Street, and the kind of crowd she was getting. At first, it was wonderful because so many Filipinos in the area came in. But then she started to get the Bourbon Street drunk crowd, and it got to be a bit much. And then with the prospect of ice coming to New Orleans, there was another thing that kind of put her off, and she shut down her restaurant. But she does do pop-ups now and then, and she's an excellent cook, excellent chef. She's she's well known in that area. I think she's pretty well known all over the country. But yeah, I can't wait for her to find another place to set up shop because I loved her food.
Yeah, just hearing you talk about that gets me hungry. I know Ate Carolyn shared with us the menu of lakbay services offered through Bayou Barkada that includes the Filipineuxs women in the historic French Quarter walking tour, which I assume you might be somehow weaved into, Rhonda, the Ninuno Ancestral and Spirit Guides historical journey package, the saltwater healing pool at Ate Jessica's house, the tarot card readings that y'all mentioned by Ate Cristina, Ninuno meditations and spiritual life workshops by Ate Carolyn herself, Trey tension and trauma releasing exercises practiced by Lovella, the Hilot Sacred Healing Manual Therapy with J of River Movement, and Tagalog language lessons with Ate Joanna. Wow, this is a lot that y'all offer through Bayou Barkada. I know that they're not with us now, but with all of these wellness services that y'all offer, are any of you involved in these services that would like to talk more about them? I know, Rhonda, you mentioned being a part of the walking tours, or maybe have participated in a few of them here and there. Rhonda, if you want to talk a little bit more, if you'd like to, around the walking tours, add to that, and then we'll go with Issa and AJ on this one.
So, immersive history tour, he goes through the French Quarter and the Maroney. If some days, if the weather's not too good, we'll just keep it to the Maroney. But when we go through the French Quarter and the Maroney, I take them to places um, that were important to the Filipino community, as well as all the places that my family lived. Like where my great grandfather had his tailor shop, and where actually in that same building, they had their home behind his tailor shop. That's where my grandmother was born. A midwife came and she birthed her right there in the house. Um, Another place that we stop is at my great great aunt Nan's house on Bundy Street. She was, we call her the Filipino witch. Like my great grandmother, and like her father, they practiced some of the spiritual practices of the Philippines, of Ilocos Norte. They were animists and they were healers and they were seers. But Aunt Nan decided that she was going to help people, and she actually put a curse on my grandmother's family, where we would all of the women in her family would have bad marriages, and it kind of worked. And anyway, um, yeah. So Aunt Nan's house is one of the places we stopped, and one of our trips, a young lady came out named Erica, and she asked if we were part of a tour, and I explained to her about the house she was living in, and she said, "Well, I'm Filipino and I'm a witch, so I guess that's why I was drawn to this house." And we were able to go inside the house, and I had a picture. This past Sunday, I brought a picture with me, and Erica let us inside, and that picture was taken with Aunt Nan and moon members of my family, many of my ancestors, in that living room. You could see the living room exactly as it was back then. So we kind of all got together and recreated that picture. But that was really fun. Another synchronicity. So, and then I share people where the Filipino-American Goodwill Society was, and where one of the Filipino men's business associations was, and just different places around there where different merchants were, and where my uncle Frank's house was, because that was like a big hub of Filipino activity. He worked for Lights Shipping Company, and he got Filipino men in the area jobs as merchant marines on ships. So he was a pretty important man in the Filipino community, and we all lived in that little area. So I could pretty much tell stories of how the Filipino community thrived, and how we came together as a family. We I had cousins, aunts, and uncles all in that same neighborhood, and I grew up feeling so much love. And I think that that comes out when I'm telling the stories of my family as we go along the tour. That I've never had any complaints. I've been in touch with a couple of the older families that I was able to find their children, and asking them for any information I have on where they live, what they did for a living, so that I can add that to the tour, because it's all in the same neighborhood. And I think it amazes the newer immigrants that come here to know that there were so many Filipinos here in the New Orleans area, and that we have been here for so long. I don't think many of them realize just how long there's been an actual established Filipino community in America. But it always takes them back, and it, I think it makes them feel a lot better knowing that Filipino history in America is part of American history. There are Filipinos that were in the War of 1812. They were in the Civil War. Um, they were misidentified very often, though. Misidentified as either Chinese or Spanish. Spanish because of their names, Chinese because they looked Asian and they didn't know what Filipinos were. So um, a lot of times they were misidentified. But a Chinese historian named Winston Ho has really helped me to find a lot of Filipinos in history that we once thought were we kind of overlooked, because we didn't know whether they were Spanish, or whether they were Chinese, or whether they were Filipino. And he's helped me a lot with that research. So yeah, that, I love doing the history walk. And I really want to get involved with some of the other stuff, but for right now, I'm kind of really busy with the history walk, so it's pretty popular.
I mean, just listening to you talk about it, you're such a wealth of knowledge in being able to carry these generational stories. It's such a gift to be able to pass that to other folks that are visiting, and even like as you mentioned, newly arrived immigrants to be able to claim a connection to this new home that they are building. I mean, just hearing you talk about even Filipinos in the Civil War, I've never heard of that. It's pretty amazing to even know that we were here back then and a part of this history, in the United States. And I was just kind of laughing to myself when you mentioned that you had an Uncle Frank, because I have an Uncle Frank. I feel like my dad's name is Frank. There's so many Uncle Franks in our community.
Yeah.
Um, Isa, what about you?
Um, but I mean, I took a lot of um knowledge from the ancestral tours to St. Malo. I went on one back in December with Ate Carolyn and my friend Michaela, and I think for me, like I didn't grow up super connected to my Filipino identity. Like I grew up with like a big Filipino family, but as far as just being like spiritually connected and ancestrally connected, I didn't feel as much like depth in that part of my life. So I think going on that tour and kind of learning more from Ate Carolyn and also the drivers who were driving our boat had a lot of knowledge about the Manila Man and kind of just like how Filipinos were involved in the fisheries. And it was like really fascinating to hear about just like these at the time strangers who were just driving the boat talking about this and that they really like Filipinos really are in kind of like every aspect of like the um up and comingness of New Orleans, I guess. And yeah, like going from so like after the boat tour, typically there's like a ritual. You go to Los Leños. Sorry. You go to Los Leños, which is I think also close by St. Malo, also in St. Bernard Parish. Um, but there's kind of like a um, mark there for St. Malo and Manila Village. And I think it's primarily for St. Malo, but I learned that my tita and my Tita Melia and Tito Carmelo were a big part of creating that marker because apparently it was very difficult to get it set up. And if you read it, there's a lot of language in there that is not typical for like historical markers. Just talking about like indigenous traditions and spirituality, which I think is very different, especially like when talking about like history, as far as just like US history. So I thought that was really interesting, and very, like, touching for me as far as just, like, being able to connect further to my own ancestry, and I think just, like, the ritual of it allows especially for, like, me as, like, a younger generation and, like, a 3rd generation trying to reconnect and kind of heal that historical fragmentation that we're talking about, um, to have that means a lot and also kind of just, like, helps in that healing process.
Hmm. And AJ, have you experienced any of the luck buy services yourself in Bayou Barkada?
Yes, like Issa, I've gone on the St. Malo boat tour and was part of part of a homecoming and land ritual there. In fact, actually wrote a song, um, gave a sonic offering at that site. Um, and I mean, I feel like the services are like a vehicle, but really what the magic of it is the relationships and connections that are built, um, and how that just continues to be a gift. So I think that's the magic of how we connect through Bayou Barkada and how space is held.
Thank you all for sharing that about Bayou Barkada. So let's start with just basically come back to the title of this episode, Louisiana Filipinos Healing Historical Fragmentation. I know Issa, you kind of alluded to going through this experience of doing the tours, getting the Saint Malo marker in as a part of the process to heal historical fragmentation for you. And AJ, you kind of alluded to that too in your sonic healing process. Is there anything that you'd like to add with regards to connecting back to this title? How do y'all heal historical fragmentation in New Orleans? We'll go with AJ first, then Isa, and then we'll have Rhoda jump in on, at the end.
I mean, for I don't know if I can speak to the entirety of New Orleans because it's so multifaceted, but I can speak from my experience as someone who's multicultural. My dad's Black from Louisiana, my mom's from the Philippines, and how I am always between worlds, right? And I feel like New Orleans in particular is very much a home for people that are in between worlds and bridge builders and connectors and people that are like walking contradictions, right? Um, and so I think part of healing historical fragmentation is getting back to the wound, right? The wounds of settler colonialism that are the original um, creators of the fragmentation. And for me, finding so many parallels and commonalities and meeting points with, Black diasporic with Afro diasporic culture and Filipino diasporic cultures as well. A lot of that for me comes through food and how I feed myself, how I take care of myself and other people through my relationship with plants and herbs um, and growing things and through music because I know so much of my voice is my mother's voice, right? Um, and how growing up in like a Black gospel tradition also affords me um the ability to connect more with like my ancestral voice from my mother's side. And something else I love about uh how New Orleans is this container for so many people who who are diasporic folks, especially island people, right? Like
Yeah.
how the Caribbean, and I mean this is the northernmost Caribbean city. This is like the easternmost African city,
Yeah.
Um and so for example, like my roommate is from Puerto Rico and like always plays salsa music, and the more I learn about the music of like the Caribbean, the more I'm connecting with for example, like haranas and like traditional Filipino music. And, I was playing I was playing a harana the other day, and my roommate was like, wait, that sounds like it came from like a village in, back home.
Mm.
Um, and so I think the healing process comes through connection. And the more we connect, um, I find that like the more I'm connecting with myself through other cultures, the deeper my connections just happen with um, with Filipinos diasporic practices.
Well said, AJ. How about you, Isa? Is there anything you'd like to add in terms of how you relate to this title?
Um, Living in New Orleans and also traveling around the country in Mexico when I was younger, we found that most of us who came here from colonized places like the Philippines, or people who were descendants of enslaved people from Africa, we all have similar, I think, similar feelings about being here, our history, the differences and the similarities. Um, I think we all kind of lost a little bit of ourselves when we were made to assimilate into our new cultures. And so we kind of, I think our spirits became a little fragmented. For instance, my mother didn't like me listening to my great grandmother's stories about healing, about speaking with spirits. things of that sort. She kept telling me, "No, that don't tell anybody that you can talk to ghosts because they'll think that you're crazy. Um, don't
Mm.
tell people that your great grandmother makes medicine for you because they'll think that we're all crazy." Also, my great grandma's medicine worked a lot better than the stuff over the counter that my mother used to buy. But things like that, I think, take so much away from us. And I just felt so strongly related to my great grandmother's way of life that it's been like a lifelong quest to get back to that. And reading Virgil Apostol's book, The Way of the Ancient Healer, really helped me a lot. Um, I actually wrote to him and I told him, reading your book was like coming home because everything my great grandmother did, you helped me to understand why she did it. And things that I used to do instinctively, just walking around, I felt compelled to hug trees and talk to them, put my hands on them and speak to them and tell them I appreciate them. I walk and if I was feeling down or something, I would look on the ground and there'd be this rock, just an ordinary rock, not a diamond, not a jewel, just a rock. And it would make me want to pick it up. And it was like it was calling to me. And I could feel the vibration of that rock in my hand and it would do a healing to me. Things like that, I think, have been lost in colonization. You've been made to try to be Catholic, for instance. Um, Several of my ancestors were burned as witches because they refused to be baptized and changed their names. And the ones that did, the ones that embraced the Catholic Church, they would just go out, they had more gods and goddesses to pray to and to make offerings to. They just kind of embraced the whole iconography of Catholicism and incorporated it into their own religion. They didn't give up their religion. They didn't give up their obligation as the healers of their community. They just took on the Catholic Church um, saints and some of their traditions to add to it. And that's pretty much what my great grandmother was. She was a combination. Her altar had Mary and Jesus and Joseph, and it also had Buddha, some of the Hindu gods, and it had rocks that she found. I didn't know why she had rocks until I started picking up rocks and found that they healed me. So I feel that she did the same thing, that certain things in nature she was drawn to would heal her. Right now, for instance, I suffer from chronic pain. And the only time I'm completely without pain is when I'm outside sitting on the ground up against a tree. All the pain leaves my body. And, things like that that are natural to indigenous peoples, we've lost out in colonization. And I think the
Mm.
thing about New Orleans that's so wonderful is that all of these different spiritual ideologies kind of come together. And it's not really ideology, it's like natural spiritualism that comes through. We go to our drum circle in New Orleans on Sundays. Um, that's a long held African American tradition. The enslaved people
Mhm.
um, in the area only had Sundays off, and they would meet at Congo Square, and they would do the drum circle and their worship, and they would buy and sell and trade. That was their day off, and it became a tradition. It was stopped for a long time, and it was picked up again, and that's a place where I go. It really is a healing place. It's a healing place. You go there, and the people just they include everybody into their circle. Um, the African American lady that does the speaking before the I can't remember her name. Ashamed I can't remember her name. But she's wonderful because she looks around and she'll ask us where we're from, what culture we're from, and if we had anything to say, and we'll usually share with our spiritual connection. is to her, to the area, to New Orleans, to the place, to the tree, to whatever. And she includes that in her dialogue.
Wow.
And I think that's a beautiful way to kind of feel the fragmentation when we realize that we have so many more things in common than we have that are different between all of us people who have been colonized by European countries. And even Europeans enjoy the drum circle and the feeling from it. But I think that's been one of the most healing things for me was just being around people. I have a friend who she's practices the Yoruba traditions, and she she and I have a lot of things in common because the Filipinos and the Africans and the Aborigines of Australia and the Native Americans, so many of our practices are very similar. And I think finding those commonalities has been a healing thing for me. Finding another Filipino community has been very healing for me because I get to hear stories from everybody. They all have different experiences. Some of them um, are from Louisiana, but they've kept their Filipino identity through the generations. Others are straight from the islands, and I learn from them too. And I think that together, when we realize that we all have, I've never been to the Philippines, and I still call it the motherland. There's something about it that just draws me to that place. And I think that we inherit certain things from our ancestors, not just the color of our eyes or the color of our hair. We also inherit the spiritual practices that they once practiced on the islands. Um, the love of water, the love of nature, um, the wanting to fish all the time. Those are things that I think have just come through the generations as inherited things. Even our gift of being able to speak to the dead, or our healing gifts, our seeing gifts. Those are also inherited from our ancestors. And I think being able to allow myself to do those things, despite what my mama used to say, I think that's been healing for me. And do you know that at the end of her life, she finally admitted to me that she could also see and speak to ghosts, but she didn't like to, because she was afraid of them. But that just goes to show you that it's just an inherited trait. You inherit the spiritual aspects as well as your physical aspect. And I think allowing yourself to be that, to be who you are, wholly and fully, spiritually, physically, emotionally, I think that's the only way that you can heal is to not fight who you are.
Wow. What I really love about this episode as I listen to all you speak are the intersections that happen in New Orleans, which really makes it, for lack of a better term, a really magical place. Rhonda, you opened up the episode talking about the origins of Spanish, French, Chinese, Filipinos. Let's not forget to include the indigenous people that are native to the area. AJ, you weaved in your roommate who's from Puerto Rico. We talked about the basically the migrations from the Caribbean, right? From the islands. I know that you also have a strong Vietnamese population there. And even the industries, talking about Rhonda, how you talked about the shrimping industry, how that was just also shrimp and fish, really native to Filipinos who migrated there from the islands. What other memorable stories y'all have when it comes to being Filipinola in New Orleans? I'd like to ask you all if you wanted to share that, and we'll come in with AJ, Issa, and then Rhonda on this question.
I think I've already shared one of my favorite experiences, which was like initial my first visit to Tatlo and meeting everyone, or my introduction to Bayou Barkada. Um and and also you know, the trip to the St. Malo Mound was, like, really impactful for me, um, because when I was asked to offer, um, you know, sound to sing, I was on the phone with Ata Carolyn, and she was I was trying to get a feel of, like, "Okay, what should I do?" And then right after I got off the phone with her, the song came to me, and I was just thinking of, um, Saint Malo, his wife's name was Cecilia, and it's very which is a very Filipino name.
Yeah.
And so, like, I felt like my role as, as a sonic offering was to sing to the women, sing to the mothers, sing to the daughters of, um, of the village that were overlooked or erased. And I remember standing on the boat and singing this song, and this huge pelican just, like, swoops down and just, like, sits, like, right in front of me and is just completely still the entire time I'm singing, and these fish started, like, jumping in the water as I was singing, and that was a really magical moment, and I think magic is the right word, right? Because magic is you taking the subtle and turning it into the gross. It's taking what's less visible and, um, less concrete and making it tangible, right? And I think that the very material reality, of our survival through our gifts actually that we inherit is part of, like, what makes being in community here really incredible.
Would you like to add to that, Isa? Do you have any memorable experiences being Filipinola or stories?
Yeah, I feel like my most memorable story was actually a couple months ago. I got a marking from Ate Wam's back in December, and it was actually the evening right before I moved to Los Angeles. And it was a very like organic process the way I didn't really know what to expect. Um, when it came to getting a marking, I wasn't sure if it was gonna be something very like structured and formal or if it was gonna be something like um I just didn't know what to expect. But it started with like we did a ritual and offering like we brought like guava leaves, pomegranates, just like different things to like off the land. We were at Kapla Blue, which is like one of like Bayou Barkada like stomping grounds. And we like gathered around this I think it was a pecan tree in the backyard, which is like a very tall, big tree, and kind of just like offering our intentions. Like we wrote down our intentions for our marking and our tattoo, and then kind of just doing it with all of these people. Like I went with my two friends, Jess and Annika, and it was just like all of these different people who like came together because Ate Carolyn just like sent us a time that Ate Wams was doing marking, so it was kind of just anyone who's in the group chat could come at that time. So it was just like people I kind of knew, people I hadn't met before, but we were all coming there for like a common goal and common wish to like have a marking to connect us to our ancestors. So like after that ritual, um, like Atewans gave us kind of like a little overview of what the process is like and the how she got started and um kind of like what the process or the marking is called batok, um and kind of just how that connects us to our ancestors and that it's kind of like these markings are kind of like a portal to them. um so and like then after we could choose our markings and kind of just like whatever speaks to us, and I had a lot of discussions with Atewams and like the people that were there, Ate Michelle, who's like a friend of Atewams, and um like I chose the marking that was I got on my back, and it was two mountains and kind of like a sun rising. And I kind of felt like I wasn't sure if I wanted to get it on my back, just because I couldn't see it, and also I was like, I thought mountains were kind of like it would be something that was, heavy or weighing on me, and like I was like, I don't know, I'm the eldest daughter of like a Filipino family. I don't know if I want something like that on my back, but I was talking to Ate Wams, and she like reminded me of the meditation of like strong back, soft front, which meaning like open heart and like
Mm.
strong back. So we were kind of just discussing that, and that's kind of like how I want to approach life, and that having like an open heart and being soft and being kind, but also knowing that like I'm like strong and connected with my ancestors, and I have that like strength of like generations and generations of like family and women. So that's kind of it was also just like it was just very, very fun too. I thought it was gonna be super formal and maybe a little, like, strict at times because that was my experience with, like, older Filipinos, especially with, like, ritual and things like that, but I think that for me, it it was it was a really beautiful and magical experience, I think, that, I'm really grateful to have had. It kind of felt like a completion in a sense of, like, being able to, like heal my connection to my Filipino culture, like having grown up there my entire life and kind of just feeling like kind of what AJ said before, like feeling between worlds and kind of this like one foot in, one foot out at the same time. So it felt really, really magical to be able to experience that with everyone.
Wow. Rhonda, do you have another memorable story that you'd like to share?
I can relate to both of their stories very much. I was going to share about my experience with Afterwams also. Um, Before she came around, I had been in touch with Lane Wilkin, and we were supposed to meet up in Washington State when he was going to a conference up there, and I was visiting my brother in Portland, Oregon. Well, his conference got canceled, and so he didn't end up there. So ever since that year, about 8 years ago, I've been wanting to get some Filipino traditional Filipino marking, and then I went to just a regular tattoo artist, and first I got a centipede on my right wrist, and she said, "Why do you want a centipede?" I said, "Because that represents this thing of my ancestors against my enemy." And then I got um, a sacred eagle on my neck, pointing, flying towards my ear. And she said, "What is this for?" And I said, "That's the words of my ancestors carried on the sacred eagle from the heavens to my ear." And she said, "Oh, your ancestors are very important to you." I said, "Yeah, they are." I said, "I really want to get to Bushnell Filipino markings with the tapping method." And she said, "Oh, it's got to be very painful." As it turns out, it's not as painful as that machine was because Ate Wam's, while she's putting these coals in, she's asking you to tell you what's your story, tell her the story. And so you're so involved in telling your story to her that you forget about the pain. And I enjoyed, I stayed downstairs from where she was staying. So I got to, um, go upstairs and watch her do that, and also Jessica's ones. Watch her mark other people also, and I got to listen to all of their stories, and that was really wonderful. I loved hearing everybody's stories, the young people as well as the elders. I think I was the oldest one there, but she gave me a marking. I tried. She wanted me to pick something out where I kept turning the pages, but I kept coming back to the two mountains with the sunrise. And I said, "I'm just drawn to this, and I don't know why." And she said, "We know there's mountains that go through where I live, and they also go through like Ilocos North. There's mountains that go through Ilocos North." And she said, "That symbol right there is from the Ilocos region. So it's a good one for you." So she did that one on me. And then she also on the other little she did a full traditional marking which represents the Cordillera the mountains of the Cordillera. And so those are the two markings that I got from her. And I felt so honored to get those from her. She respected all of our stories. She wanted to hear from us. And it wasn't just, she wasn't just a tattoo artist. She was a culture bearer. She was somebody who was giving us a piece of the Philippines. The wood edge that she used in the markings were from where she comes from pine trees in the area. She brought water with her from different springs. Some of that was from springs right in places that she had visited, and some of them were from springs that came out of the mountain where she lives. So she kind of really connected us to the motherland when she marked us, and that felt so special to me. I think that's one of my favorite. I've had a lot of very interesting ones. So I've had a lot of favorite experiences, but that was really way up there. Um, I just felt so close to my ancestors when she was marking me, and I do now too. All I have to do is, and I take such care of it every day. I put coconut oil on all my muffins, even though they're peeled. I just do it as a ritual. I put it on my muffins, and I remember my ancestors when I'm doing that. Like I'm nurturing them and I'm telling them that I'm holding these stories and I'm bringing them forward to the next generation. We have some young presidents that are lined up to take over from me when I pass. I wanted to make sure that I would do that. So I think the experience with Dr. Wong's just really put a fire under me, and I kind of started jotting down notes of things and have to write a story of the history of my family just to keep the stories going.
Wow. We all have this thread with Ate Wam's. She also marked me. Rhonda, I mean, you're just in a. I know you call yourself an amateur historian, but I can't emphasize enough how much how that's just a humble outlook that you have of yourself, because you're definitely a knowledge and cultural bearer there in New Orleans, and you're also a freelance writer. You say you identify as a queer Filipino-American multidisciplinary artist and storyteller. AJ, you're a Grammy Award-winning musician and reproductive justice advocate. What are you all currently working on at the moment? Share that with us. We'll start with Rhonda, and then in addition to the walking tours, is there anything else you're currently working on as a freelance writer? And then followed by AJ and Isa.
Or as far as writing goes, yeah, I'm gathering up all of the research, okay, massive amounts of research that I've been doing over the past maybe 20 years. So I'm gathering all of that up, and I actually come across some new stuff I didn't know I had. Handwritten notes by one of my aunts and by my great grandmother that I can add to it. But I'm trying to get everything in chronological order so that I can formulate a story. Um, I've been jotting down any stories that I remember from my great grandmother and my grandmother. It's going to be a massive undertaking, but I feel that it's something that I've been called to do. Yeah, that's my project that I'm starting to work on right now. It's just gathering up my papers and pictures and everything in chronological order. Um, Jessica and Carolyn said that they would also help me to digitally archive all of the documents and photographs that I have of my family so that they don't get lost in a storm. I lost so many things when Hurricanes Katrina and Hurricane Isaac. I don't want to lose any more. So we're going to digitally archive all of that. That's going to be a big project. And I'm going to start writing the history of my family.
Amazing. And you, AJ?
Yeah, currently I'm working on an album called Mother Your Mind, as well as an immersive installation piece that will incorporate sounds from my album, as well as meditations on mothering And mothering not is just as the process of giving birth, but mothering is the glad gifting of, one's talents. I feel like eldest daughters are our own kind of mothers, right? And just all the different walks of life that are mothering, um, and also working with Alex, who's a mutual friend of ours, also part of Bayou Barkada, who's going to help design and install the sonic altar. And I'll be doing that at Ashe Cultural Arts Center. Um, and yeah, working on my album. It's been a process, and really sitting with the grief and the joys of being a daughter, and mothering myself.
Send us a flyer on that Sonic Altar. I know we'd love information on that to share with our community whenever it's ready.
I will.
How about you, Isa?
Yeah, I'm currently working on writing a piece for an anthology about the Filipino diaspora. I'm writing about my family's experience running a Filipino food project at the 1984 World's Fair.
Ooh.
Um, I'm calling it The Secret Ingredient Sustains Us. So I've kind of just been working on like my own writing, especially just like as a third generation, kind of making sense of being Filipino, like as a younger generation, and kind of like learning how it fits within my own history.
Mm. Let's circle back to this podcast being a health and wellness podcast. Amongst Filipinolas, what do y'all see are the priorities and challenges that you're currently facing? Rhonda, maybe if you could start with this and then we'll follow up with AJ and then Isa. Since you moved from one LA to the other LA, feel free to contribute to this question too.
As the eldest daughter in a Filipino family, I had to go with my mother and my grandmother to visit the sick um, and elderly friends and family. And as it turned out, that ended up being my calling in life. After doing so many other things, I finally um, stopped fighting it and started becoming a caregiver. I've noticed through the years that caregiving has changed. A lot of the elderly are just put away in homes instead of being cared for by the family. Um, my job really is to keep people in their own home for as long as possible. Um, I'm living right now with a friend of mine who has dementia, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep his family from um, putting him in a facility for as long as I can keep him here. Um, for myself, though, I tend to take care of everybody else when I forget to take care of myself. I think that's something that many of us do. Um, so my doctors, I've had 2 doctor's appointments this week, and all 3 of them fussed at me because my labs didn't look too well, and my pain level was going up. So they told me I have to, or just really have to mindfully take care of myself. And I think that's been a problem for a lot of people, specifically, I think women. There are a lot of men who have become caregivers also. I've seen men taking care of their family, but a lot of times it's the women that are left with that task. And my biggest problem right now is taking time for myself, taking time to take care of myself, um, while not failing my duties of taking care of somebody else. So I'm sure all of y'all have stories like that too.
And then AJ?
Yeah, I think part of being part of the larger struggles of being in the global south is that like we're living through constant crises, and like Louisiana is no exception. In fact, we are a state with severe human rights violations, one of them being a lack of access to abortion care. And so, my background in reproductive justice, specifically around abortion care as a reproductive health issue, and abortion care as healthcare is definitely uh, shapes my perspective because it is disproportionately women of color and gender expansive people of color who are shouldering the burden of taking care of their families while also not having human rights. And so um I think that that's a concern, whether that's articulated, whether our people feel safe enough to articulate that enough because of um the climate that we're in, where abortion is already a taboo subject, right? And comprehensive sex education is not accessible and not encouraged. um So thinking about, what is my role in that as a creative, as an artist, as someone with a platform, as someone with visibility, and as someone who's, I'm pretty irreverent and determined to mm, stay that way, Um, and so I can't say that lack of abortion care specifically, as well as lack of care for all reproductive services is something that is clearly vocalized, or loudly vocalized, but it is something that is impacting, all people of color, um, disproportionately here in Louisiana.
Got it. Isa, what's your take on this?
Um, I feel like when it comes to health and wellness, I think the when it like priorities should be like when I think of this, I think New Orleans has an incredible community and Filipinos in New Orleans especially, like we've built this beautiful community that has allowed us to not only like sustain our culture but like create these healing practices and being able to like work together to do so. Um, but I think like something I would love to see is kind of just like conversations between generations. I think for me, like my I my cultural identity journey started with being able to interview Uncle Al, Al Alcazar, who's a Filipino elder from New Orleans. And I think just the curiosity behind that, and like there's such a wealth of knowledge, like we've seen it today with like Ate Rhonda, the wealth of knowledge that they have. Um, I think that kind of like bridges the divide and like kind of creates more camaraderie and kind of just like expands us as individuals. And I think that contributes to our own health, like the communal health that we need in order to be able to live in the present day that we live in.
Thank you for that. So, as we begin to close, if y'all could remind our community how to best reach each of you or even Bayou Barkada, if they have additional questions regarding what we discussed or if they plan on visiting New Orleans. Um, AJ, how can they reach you? Then Isa and Rhonda.
I am working on my website, but I'm also reachable on social media platforms, Instagram, which is A period J period Haynes Haynes. And I'm also on Substack, um, hoping to be more active on that as well. And you can probably put a link in the show notes to like all of our Instagrams and stuff. And Bayou Barkada's Instagram as well.
Great. Isa?
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Isabella Tablan, IsaTablan, and also on Substack at Aspiring Human, ASPIRINGHUMA.
And then Rhonda, how can they reach you or get a hold of Bayou Barkada if anyone's cruising through New Orleans?
Well, in social media, I'm mostly on Facebook under Rhonda Lee Richoux. And also, I'd like everybody to visit the Filipino-Americans in Louisiana Facebook page. We have a lot of historical content on there that would be very interesting, I think. to reach Bayou Barkada, it's on Instagram. It's just at Bayou Barkada, and they have an email address, bayoubarkada at gmail.com. And we can also book the walking, the historical and immersive history walking tours through one of those outlets, either the Instagram or the Gmail.
Awesome. Final words. Do you all have any words of advice that you'd like to give our global diaspora with regards to healing and wellness, or even on the topic of healing historical fragmentation? We'll start with Isa, AJ, and then Rhonda.
I think that as far as just like addressing like healing historical fragmentation, like be patient with yourself, be gentle, and like reach out to the people in your community. I think a lot of what we learn is like through one another, just sharing our own stories and experiences and perspectives. I know like my journey was a lot of trial and error, and I think it's also like healing isn't linear and it's all a process, and I don't think it's ever really fully done. It just expands and it expands your capacity, and it's kind of just like it evolves. So that's what I would say to healing.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, the body is the first temple, the body is the first altar, and to stay embodied means sitting with discomfort, doing things that challenge you and expand you, and that your body knows because your body is also, you inherited from your ancestors. So follow your first mind and stay embodied.
And you, Rhonda, final words or anything that you'd like to share with our global diaspora around healing historical fragmentation?
Thing that I'd like to point out, um, Yusuf and AJ, y'all are wonderful. I enjoyed everything that y'all had to say. And what I want to point out is that being a part of Bayou Barkada, I've been given such respect um, by the younger people in our group. But I want y'all to know that I have such respect for all of you too, because y'all don't just learn from me. I learned so much from all of you. And the part of um, one of the things that's great about being a part of Bayou Barkada is that it is intergenerational, it's multi generational. And I get to learn things from you as much as you learn from me. And to me, that's been really a great gift. So I appreciate all of you. I so appreciate every time y'all join in on things like this, or just everyday conversations when we all get together for a meal. I appreciate all of you.
We appreciate you too, Rhonda. Thank you all for taking the time to talk to our community about healing historical fragmentation in New Orleans and Louisiana. We're excited to witness your journeys unfold within this work or wherever your paths end up taking you. We look forward to staying connected in partnership and sharing your upcoming opportunities with our global diaspora. And to our community, in alignment with Mental Health Awareness Month, I'm personally excited to host our second episode of our sixth season featuring clinical certified hypnotherapist and transformational NLP practitioner Daniel Bilog, psychotherapist Jason Bueno, and founder of Shift Foundation and co founder of Men, Mike Sagoon. Stay tuned as this episode titled How Vulnerability Helps Filipino Men Heal will air on Wellness Wednesday, May 13, 2026. As we close, we'd like to acknowledge once again our guest speakers, AJ Haynes, Rhonda Lee Richoux, and Isa Tablan, our Philippine X and Wellness team, as we welcome our new social media strategist, Jana May Rubio, our advisors, our community partners, and all of our community members for your shares and support. As always, you can find more about our guests' offerings on our Instagram stories and saved in our highlights, so you'll have access to their upcoming events. Be sure to follow us at Philippine X and Wellness on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our Philippine X and Wellness YouTube channel. If you like what we're bringing you and would like more, show us some love by buying us a coffee or taking advantage of our offerings via our monthly membership on Patreon. Thank you as always for believing in us. Be well, everyone. Continue to take care of yourselves and each other. Salamat kaayad.
Hello everyone, magandang araw. This is Sheena Katz and Mark King, and we are the hosts of Filipineuxs in Wellness, a podcast rooted in community, culture, and collective healing for the Filipineuxs community.
And today we are super excited to announce something we've been dreaming of for a while. We are launching our official Patreon.
This is your invitation to ride along with us. If our episodes have ever made you feel seen, witnessed, or naintindihan, then this is your space to be part of what keeps it going.
Your support on Patreon directly funds our ability to keep creating, covering production costs, bringing on more brilliant guests, and expanding what this community can be.
We've also created some very special offerings for our members, things like exclusive bonus contents, Filipino health and wellness products, invitations to live wellness events, digital resources, and more.
Whether you're joining for $1 a month or $20, know that every contribution fuels a movement, one where Filipino wellness is visible, centered, and celebrated.
So if you've been vibing with us, learning with us, and would like to see more, come join us on Patreon. Let's strengthen this movement together.
Maraming salamat.
Maraming salamat.